Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. You know who it is, and thank you for listening to this new episode of the Needle Drop Podcast. Before we get into the show, we want to remind you that this is a listener-supported podcast, which means it exists because of those who support it, and they do so in a few different ways. One, they get weekly downloads of this show via a monthly subscription on our support page. We will link you to it in the description box. Looks like this, button right there. Also, you can hit up our Amazon Associates link, where basically we get a kickback for all purchases you make on Amazon.com when you use this link. Only works in the US, though, unfortunately. But you can use it to basically make purchases you were already planning on making on Amazon, and that helps out this podcast as well. Also, you can stream it on YouTube and share it with a friend. All support is appreciated. All right, thank you for listening again, and on with the show. Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. You know who it is, and it is a brand new episode of the Needle Drop Podcast, where on this episode I have a very special guest. All of my guests are special. I call them all very special. I'm going to tell the audience specific things that you do, and you tell me whether I've gotten them right or wrong.
Gotcha.
Okay. My guest here, he's an illustrator.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
He's an animator.
Mm-hmm.
He is a Kendrick Lamar impersonator.
Mm-hmm.
He's
That's my Kendrick impression.
Just doing the mm-hmm. He is a DC inhabitant.
Mm-hmm.
He's a podcaster and one half of the Double Ds.
Mm-hmm.
He's a broken dick expert.
Mm-hmm. My dick's broken right now. Keep going.
He is an amateur hostage negotiator.
I didn't know. Yeah, you know, actually, yeah. If there's a hostage out there right now, I can get him out in one piece.
And also a sexual exhibitionist.
How many shitty glitched out voice things can I do right now? No, I am. All right.
And also, as I just learned, a bit of an emotional eater.
Yes, that is the most true out of all of those. I'm more of an emotional eater than I am an illustrator. That's my first profession, is eating whenever I'm nervous.
Oh, how much? how much does that pay?
You get paid
per year, emotional eating.
You get paid per basically based on the feelings you get. So you're weighed beforehand, and you have these electrodes on your body, and then you go and eat, and then they test the brain waves after you eat that Twinkie, and then you're like, oh, the more brain waves you get, whatever sort of measure that is, the more money you get.
Yeah. Well, it pays. I thought it paid in pounds, which I thought maybe you should move out to the UK. That's legal tender over there. Oh. That was a zinger.
Like a bullet.
That was a
oh boy.
Hey man, I've heard some of your fucking jokes on that podcast.
Well, stinkers, man. Like 90% of them.
I've been a fan of yours for a while. Actually, since you hit me up and was like, "Hey man, you want to do an interview?" And prior to that, I don't know how much I knew of your stuff.
Had you seen any of my stuff before then?
I don't think I came across it because at the time, I mean, your channel was pretty small.
Oh, yeah.
Although at the time, I was pretty impressed with some of the interviews that you had pulled up until that point. You were doing an interview series where you would draw a portrait of whoever you had onto the interview.
Yeah, man. That was the idea that really kicked me off, I guess.
I guess you have a background in IT, correct?
I do. That's my day job that I hate, that I'm desperate to leave.
Okay. And so when exactly did you start to kind of, not to get into a conversation about something that you hate, but, you know, has technology and computers, has that been a passion for as long as drawing has been, or for not as long, or was this career move just kind of something that you knew would sort of pay the bills and you knew could kind of supplement your income and your lifestyle as you're sort of pursuing illustration and animation?
That's a really good question. The short answer is that I think I loved computers equally as much as drawing since I was like 6. That's when we got our first Mac, like a Performa, I think Performa 575 or something. And I remember, this is going to sound cliche, but I remember getting that computer. I remember how that computer smelled. I remember the sounds it would make. I remember interfacing with this thing and being like, and I wouldn't get the internet for like 7 years after that, but I remember every day I'd spend hours on this machine. And just, we didn't play outside that much. I grew up in a really shitty part of Brooklyn back in the late 90s, like way before gentrification. But it was like shitty. So it was a good thing for us to be inside on the computer. And I just, interfacing with it, it just felt natural. It felt like I wanted and needed to know everything about this machine as much as possible. Not that I'm a computer expert, but I mean, eventually I ended up getting a job because I mean, I'm decent enough at that stuff. But I think the drawing, like I said, I've been doing it since I was like 6, but I think I didn't have an idea that it was going to be a thing. It was something that I was good at or just decent at until I was like in 8th grade. And then from then it's just been a steady kind of me trying to figure out where I fit into all of this and whether or not I can make a difference and sort of make any kind of money off of it. I'm still trying to learn that stuff.
I kind of get this feeling that the computers and that sort of technology is something that you kind of took naturally to, whereas drawing wasn't necessarily something that you were good at off the bat and that you needed to kind of teach yourself. But what was driving you to do that was passion.
Yeah, man. I think a lot about that word. I really do think about that because I don't know that the traditional way we use the words talent and passion are even, I don't know that it's even relevant. I mean, like, but in answer to your question, drawing for me was, I was always a creative kid. Like, you could ask me a question, like, you could ask my 6-year-old self, like, okay, where do flies come from? And I could make a story for you. That's still to this day, it's not hard for me. You can ask me something. I'll just make up some bullshit out of my head. So I think I always had that, whatever that thing is that's installed in you, that's like, you give me a blank piece of paper. Like, I'm dog shit at math, but if you give me a blank sheet of paper, I'll give you a story. I'll give you some made up shit. But drawing for me, I don't think, I'm still not the best draftsman. If I'm going based only on my drawing abilities, I'm not the best. I'm never going to be. And that's one thing that I had to learn. I think like 3-4 years ago, I really learned that. Like, I was trying to be, for the longest time, I was trying to be one of these guys who spends like 60 hours on a painting, and then it's just this still image that you just hang on your wall. That was my idea of what a good drawing or good art was. And it wasn't until I really started becoming honest with myself about what my capabilities were and what I love doing that I started doing stuff that was sort of, like, my best work started when I realized I like when things move, and they don't necessarily need to look finished, but they need to move, and I like when images move and talk and sort of do more than just sit there and look pretty with one frame.
Were you enamored with animation as a kid? Because I kind of feel like our generation, especially in the 90s and in the 80s too, exposed to an incredible amount of animation. Actually, maybe more the 90s than the 80s, because, a lot of cartoons were kind of relegated to, sort of Saturday morning, or just kind of when kids might be watching TV just in general, whereas a platform like Nickelodeon in the 90s was just throwing animation at you from night until day. Yeah. Although, they had Nick at Night, so you were watching the oldies shows on there, which I don't even know if they do that as much as they used to. But yeah, I mean, pretty much all afternoon you were just seeing cartoons. And I think as a result of that, people who grew up during that decade kind of have a bit of I guess, a soft spot for animation in general, to the point where, you know, a lot of them grow up and they continue watching shows like Adventure Time and that kind of thing. And also when those people grow up, I mean, you have more animation and more cartoons, but they're for adults now. You know, it's South Park, it's Adult Swim, you know, it's Simpsons, although, you know, that was already kind of I guess a bit of an institution in the 90s, but that show was, you know, one of the first of its kind to be as successful as it was, an animated show that was just more for adults.
Yeah, I watched so much Simpsons. I watched a lot of cartoons, but I would say that I think I would argue that it transcends generations. And I say this because of I love art in general, but even more than that, sometimes I think it's really important, and I love to watch people consume art. Like, you go through museums and you see, like, look at someone looking at a painting versus looking at a video. It's like, how much time are they spending on each one? I would argue that from babies to grown-ass people, grown-ass being like 40, 30 and above, I think people are very much drawn to things that move and make noises, because that's it tickles a different part of your brain. Something that's still is, I mean, I'll just call it like it is. It's not moving, and there's less colors. Like, there's a reason that.
Well, anything that's going to stimulate more senses at once, you know, is going to unquestionably attract more people.
Right. So it has more to it, and again, that was a big revelation for me. It's like, I can't do one thing really good. I'm never going to be able to paint really good. But I know that, I mean, one of the compliments I get, probably one of the biggest compliments I get, it's nothing physical. Like, the biggest compliment I get in my life is that people like my voice. They'll say, oh, you have a deep voice. You should do radio. You should do something like that. And it sort of clicked with me once that it's like, I have all of these things. I have all these things in this bowl, and it's like, let me just talk and draw and do all this other, like, whatever it is that I can do, let me just do it all at once. And what does that look like? So the idea being, it's like you use your voice with your drawing, with anything else that's available to you to make something that's uniquely you. So yeah, you're right. Like, stimulating more senses than just one, because I feel like I can't get someone with just me, with just a still image. I need for it to move. I need for sounds to be incorporated. I need to do as much as possible to make something that's me.
Would you say that you're the type of artist? Well, I mean, I think I already know how you're going to answer this, but it seems to me like you're the type of artist who really kind of, you know, is where they are simply off of just kind of I don't want to use the word passion again, because it kind of seems like,
it's fine.
You know, but I guess kind of just a focus and a drive that comes from just an interest in that sort of thing, versus, I don't know, what some people would just call some kind of raw talent that comes out of nowhere.
I see what you're getting at.
You know,
now people would argue that, and I have argued with people, and people will say, yeah, you're talented. That's why you are where they are. And any day I would rather have someone call me passionate and say that I worked for whatever it is that I have, because that's the reality. Is like, I'm obsessed with getting, hey, what's going on? It's my roommate. Obsessed with getting better and doing the best possible job. And if I'm doing better than I was a month ago or a year ago, I think that's great. But I do have a really strong work ethic. So
sure.
Yeah, and I'll take that any day over the guy who could draw really well from the beginning, but is making stuff that's not that exciting, or they're not that happy about it. Because I'm loving this every moment.
Are there truly guys like that, or, you know, is that or is that just something that we assume, kind of like what you were saying with you know, that person who you just brought up kind of as an example? You know, we're not audience to that person's process of kind of teaching themselves to draw from the beginning. Right. So as a result, when we come across them doing what they do, we're just like, oh yeah, that guy just raw talent. Just been amazing since he probably picked up a pencil.
I think there are people like John Singer Sargent is one of my favorite artists, and he's He's like what you imagine when you think of painting from the 1900s and earlier. Let's say just 1900s painting. This guy, you look him up, incredible draftsman. And this guy, if you look at some of the stuff he was doing it with, like from 12 or 13, it's like right out of the gate, he was just smashing, like effortless. When he needed to learn how to paint someone's nose, he would just do it like a few times, and he would just, not that he didn't work hard, but I think there are definitely people who just their aptitude is higher. Like you only need to show them something a few times or just once, and then it's like they have it. Like they know how to draw a nose for the rest of their life. And there's some people, unfortunately, who is like it's going to take them 500 times to figure out how to draw that nose. But your question's like, are there people who?
No, I mean you pretty much answered
okay,
it.
okay.
You know, you pretty much answered it. But going a little bit further back, you went to art school, correct?
Yeah, I went to University of Maryland, and it's a research university. It's science and tech and research, but they have an art program there. I just say art school. I mean, I went to the art program in Maryland, so I got an art degree from there. But yeah.
Okay, were you studying computers over there at the same time,
Nope.
or no?
Yeah,
Okay.
I got my job on kind of a fluke, because I was lucky and I was good at computers and people. Like I know how to get along with people, and being able to get along with people is a huge skill. Anywhere you go, if people like you, they will good things will just happen to you just from you trying to be good and link people up. But I studied studio art, and over there it was pretty much they were kind of an abstract art school, and they still are. Like when you go to art school, your faculty determines what kind of curriculum you have. Obviously, like what kind of stuff you're taught is the good art. So if you go in there, like a lot of kids will go to school being like, "Oh, anime and manga and Batman is like that's the best kind of art." Stuff like concept design, Star Wars paintings, like that's the good stuff. But they would kind of try and beat that out of the kids and teach them about Picasso and I don't know, Rothko and whoever else you can think of who's kind of abstract.
Now you grew up in New York. What exactly attracted you to that particular university?
Oh, I moved.
You know,
I moved down.
You were living there at the time?
No, I moved down here I moved down to the Maryland D.C. area when I was 8. So it was local. It was the best school that was local to me. At the time, I was super religious, so like I had my foot still kind of in the door of being a Jehovah's Witness. So I didn't want to leave too far. So yeah, I was a commuter.
Okay, and that's another thing I kind of wanted to ask you about. You know, growing up with Haitian parents who you were born in the U.S. or
Yeah,
you
I
were
was
born in
born in the
Haiti?
U.S. Yeah.
Okay, and your parents, you know, what is it sort of, you know, like? I guess in your experience, if you could kind of quantify it or kind of put it succinctly in any kind of way, I mean, you know, I think it's one thing to sort of grow up black in this country, but it's also, you know, another thing to grow up black, but have parents who are, you know, first generation immigrants.
Yeah, man.
You know, fresh off the boat, I guess,
Yeah.
as a lot of people would say. You know, that has to be an entirely different experience in and of itself, and also for them to, you know, have this very specific sect of Christianity kind of be their belief system. I mean, it just kind of seems like there's a lot of sort of separators
Yeah,
there
man.
between you and sort of what you would just call mainstream culture.
Absolutely. And I think back then, I think I used to feel. I think everyone feels different, but like you said, there were a lot of separators, and the religion specifically. It was like they wanted you to separate yourself, and there were all sorts of things.
You're talking about the people that run the church.
Yeah,
or-
yeah, that's how it works. The people in there sort of teach you to separate yourself. Like I didn't. Whenever there was like Christmas or Halloween celebrations in elementary school, I had to tell the teacher that I couldn't be there, and she would send me out of the class, like stuff like that. But in hindsight, all of these things really reinforced, I think, my ability to just, if I'm sitting, even though if I'm sitting by myself anywhere. I can just zone out and start thinking about stories or whatever. I don't know if and I don't know if these things would have been inside of me if all these I guess separators weren't there, but I do know it's something that comes very easily to me. And I'm also not. I am aware that like when I was growing up, uh, it's like I got accused of talking white all the time. But people would just make fun of you for reading and shit like that. I didn't go to good schools. I went to public schools, but like I never felt as though what I was doing was wrong. Like I never felt like I needed to give in to be like anybody else because I guess that's sort of like the Haitian component where it's like you're not like these people anyway. And I don't know if you know this, but like it's like Haitian people like immigrants don't see themselves as whatever it is that like they don't see themselves as black people. Like Haitians come here like and they're Haitians, they're not black. Like blacks are like black Americans, and they
Oh yeah,
for better
absolutely.
or for worse they see themselves as different. So it's like you're not like those kids, and it was like instilled in me. It's like I should never consider myself like them. Whatever it is that they're doing, that's their business. I'm sort of on this path. So if I'm sitting there reading novels and comic books in gym class, which is what I was doing, it's like I'm on the right path. Whatever those other kids were telling me was sort of like, eh. But on the flip side, I can think of a lot of Haitian kids who did sort of, I don't know, assimilate to whatever, like, and behave however like the American kids were, I guess.
No, I mean, I sort of expected that answer. I mean, my father is an awarded, weightlifting coach, and
Dude, I
one of
never knew
his
this.
yeah, and then one of his closest friends who he trained, and he trained at powerlifting meets with. He's Haitian as well, and they pretty much have the same the same opinion about what it is to be Haitian versus what it is to be kind of categorized in America as black.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it seems like you just had so many things going for you at a young age that were against the cultural grain of where you were, and it kind of seems like you just kind of shrugged it off and you're just like, oh, whatever, I'm just doing what I do despite the fact that it's not what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, it's because you just and I wish more kids could think like me. Look at me, this beacon of hope in the black community. Yeah, yes, just rain the accolades upon me. No, but I would have. I remember distinct moments in my life, and my brother was also a big influence on me. We're just like because he's the only other person who had the exact same upbringing as me, so I could talk to him about this all the time. But like. So he also reinforces like, these ideas about like, okay, so it's okay for me to be a dork and do whatever. But I remember
He wasn't really interested in fitting in either.
oh, absolutely not. No, less than me because he doesn't.
Oh.
This thing that I have about reaching out to people and making art and all these magical things that sort of move around and make noises so I can get girls to pay attention to me or whatever the fuck reason I'm doing all this and reaching out for attention or love from people, he doesn't need it. He doesn't need that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm also aware that it's this thing that I need, which is, I mean, it may be like the nature nurture thing where it's just inside of me anyway. But what the fuck was I going to talk about? I was gonna make a great point. Oh,
Well,
yeah,
I could go off of that if you don't know what your point is.
I do
but
I do remember.
Okay.
Just real quick, I remember there were distinct moments in my life, like reading my first Stephen King book and feeling like I don't know who this guy is who wrote this, but I was probably like in seventh grade. And I don't know who this person is, but they sort of understand me on some wavelength. Like I'm tapping into something. I think I actually might have been sixth grade when I started reading his books, but that was a super influential thing for me. And from then, it's like you're reading even more weirder books and like, okay, there are other people out there who have these fucking weird thoughts like I do, and it's not bad, you know.
That's funny because I've heard a lot of people say certain things like that about certain pieces of art or certain artists of whatever medium, but I've never had that kind of experience, honestly, when I've enjoyed much of anything.
So you're saying when you were younger, you never had that moment where you're like, I'm connecting with this person and they sort of get me. I know that sounds cliche. You never had.
No. I really haven't. And I know it does sound cliche. I mean, I've heard it a lot of times.
You were big in the punk scene and all that, right?
I was, but the thing is, like, I never really got the sensation that when I was listening to something, you know, and let's just use music as an example, because music is what, you know, I enjoyed the most when I was, you know, younger, and what I enjoy the most now. But I've never listened to a record and gotten the sensation that, man, this person gets me, you know. I think the closest I've come to that is that, you know, I listen to the record and I feel like I understand the artist, or at least what I think the artist is portraying themselves as. And I think that that's really interesting. You know, but the thing is, it's that kind of emotional connection, and it's that kind of point of view that you know, causes the situation when I review something negatively and then somebody's like, fuck this asshole, you
right,
know, this guy,
because
the thing is, you know, a lot of people, when you don't like an album or don't like a movie or something, you know, that they feel like, you know, this gets me. You know, when you critique that, when you dislike that, it's like you're critiquing them,
right?
You know, and you're disliking them because some people feel like this represents me, you know. And I think that there are some records out there that I really enjoy that maybe I think I might connect with on an ideological level, or maybe I could say if my personality was a record, it could sound like this, or it would be this specific album or something. But even so, when I go to eat up the finer details, I'm like, oh, you know, I don't like that, or, you know, I would never say that, or something.
What about now?
You know?
Okay, we're not talking about your 10-year-old self. Now, are there moments where you consume a piece of art, visual performance, you know, a quesadilla, some Cheetos, you eat something, whatever, and you think to yourself, this is transcendent. This thing is what I've been looking for.
Oh, sure, absolutely. You know, but I don't think it's I think having a moment of ecstasy and transcendence with art is different than feeling like the art represents you, or that the artist kind of gets you in some kind of way.
What we're dancing around now, it might be a semantic thing. It might be, we might have to sort of describe, what does it mean?
I don't necessarily think so. I think they're two very different things, and I think they're different things in this way. I think the transcendent kind of thing, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, if this is not how you're imagining it. To me, the transcendent thing, the thing that is so amazing, it's kind of like, you know, staring at a wonderful, huge, gigantic piece of architecture or something that's just so huge and awe-inspiring. You know, it's so grand and so amazing and so well executed that it really has nothing to do with you whatsoever. You're just in awe of its greatness. Of course, you know, that's all based on your perception, so it has a lot to do with you. But, you know, I'm not really thinking of myself at all when I'm thinking of those moments. I mean, I think the reason I prefer those kinds of moments, or art that makes me feel that way, is that I actually, you know, forget about myself as a person for a moment. It's like I, or the world that I exist in, isn't even real. The only thing that matters right now is this thing that I'm observing. Whereas, you know, the other thing, the flip side that we were just talking about, is something that I guess it kind of comes down to relatability, or kind of feeling a little less lonely in the world, or you know, to me, art that I'm in awe of doesn't, you know, make me feel less lonely. It doesn't even make me think of loneliness or me or anything. You know, it's more about how great that piece of art is. Whereas, you know, the loneliness and the relatability and that sort of thing, that's a different thing. And certainly, you know, there are records that I have felt like over the years that, you know, I relate to in some kind of way. But I mean, I never really feel like an album has gotten me, you know. Maybe I'm not listening to the right artists. I don't know.
I do still think, I mean, that second thing you described, being made to feel like you're not alone, that probably that's a better description of that feeling I had than saying that something gets me. Because I've never really liked that phrase, but the idea of being not alone is a probably a more powerful way to describe it because it's like, okay, it doesn't this object doesn't understand me, whatever that means, but this other person who is here is sort of like it's almost like if you were looking at a glass cube with some hamsters in it, and one of the hamsters is like, it's kind of strange that we're inside this cube, right? And the other one's like, holy shit, I have these thoughts too. That's crazy. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah. No, I think it does.
That's I think that's the feeling I'm describing in a very like micro sort of.
Yeah. No, it seems like maybe these are feelings that someone who considers themselves an artist tends to have a little bit more, or maybe somebody who is maybe more of an emotional sort. I mean, I've always considered myself to be like a little too pragmatic, you know, to kind of sort of have I guess those kinds of emotions, you know, those feelings of loneliness kind of drive me to be doing anything significant. Although, you know, what I think is interesting about you and sort of what you're talking about when you're a kid is that you're not really necessarily looking for acceptance and trying to fit in with the kids at school, or, you know, you're not really worried about kind of following the life path that a lot of other people are in order to, you know, kind of portray outwardly as somebody who, you know, oh, I'm just like everybody else. I get it just like you do. You know, we're all into the same stuff. We're all thinking the same things. So you have that opinion, you have those feelings, but simultaneously you're trying to reach out and connect with people, but not through fitting in, but through art.
Absolutely. Yeah. You described it perfectly. That's great because the feelings I got from consuming those novels and even playing video games when I was an adolescent, just like Final Fantasy VII, for instance, like those memories. Ask anyone who's played Final Fantasy VII when they were an adolescent. That game is just burned into your memory, and it really just it is this thing where even if you're talking about the game, you're all talking about this experience that you had, and it is kind of this bonding thing through the art, and not necessarily like you doing what your supposed cool kids at your school were doing. Like that's not how you were bonding. You were bonding through these other things. And this, like, you're raising all these sorts of like ideas in my mind. Like I'd love to see like a cross section, or sort of like how like what kind of people think about art in these different ways. Like who's thinking about it in terms of it being this thing where you have to like it obliterates your sense of ego or your sense of self. Is that a good thing versus is it making you feel like you are with other people, and is that the good thing? And who's saying,
you know, honestly, I think the same piece of art can elicit those two reactions. It just kind of depends it just depends on who the person is, really.
Right.
And sort of what they look for in art, I guess. You know, and maybe this is something I'm more tending to do these days because of just kind of my job, but you know, I'm not really in the business of trying to, you know, sort of try to analyze and think of the artist behind the music I'm listening to. You know, I'm just trying to think of the music that I'm listening to.
You know, I want to figure this out so I can monetize it, and let's exploit these guys so Coca-Cola can get their money. All right, fam, let's do it. Sorry, go on.
There's probably. I'm gonna put a YouTube AdSense commercial right here.
Please.
I'm gonna try to get it to be a Coca-Cola pre-roll. No, I have no control over that.
Just right as I'm trying to say profound things, just throw a Coke ad right in the middle of it. You know, I just feel like the world is just, you drink a Coke, you fuck. You're lazy and you need to drink this to feel better.
Yeah, I hate it when commercials try to portray like this anything having to do with being meaningful. You know, like all of it, like, oh, your soft drink is just like super important to the emotional well-being of so many people out there.
I'm in tune to that now, and you can tell by the music they play when you have this chorus of people, and there's like all this twinkling, and the 15-year-old cute boy and the 15-year-old cute girl are holding their Cokes together, and like, yeah, this is all warm and fuzzy, and it's like, what does this have to do with me drinking a sugary like fluid, man?
And there's like some really just like a crappy faux commercial indie pop hanging in the background that has like, you know, a bunch of like boys and girls going la 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 la,
exactly,
you know, with like some acoustic guitars and electric guitars kind of twinkling.
Like, you're not fooling me, motherfucker. But the other thing I think about is like, if you had a Coke commercial where it was like, you see this large bloody field and just like this naked woman with one arm is crawling through it, and she's like, I lost my family. And she says, I lost my family 30 times, and then she drinks a Coke at the end. I'd be like, this is the greatest thing ever made in advertising. But I'd be the only one. What is that?
When I was a kid, I had, and this is like maybe a junior high or so, I had this idea in my head that what would make for an amazing Ruffles commercial is just like a really, like a person in a room, sort of like I guess like an all white room, maybe in like a straight jacket or something, and just like screaming his brains out for 30 seconds and just like have it cut to him, like, you know, screaming in a different part of the room. It's a very small room, so maybe you could throw a camera up in the corner and just, you know, now he's screaming in that corner, now he's screaming in that corner, and now he's like running into the wall or something, and then, you know, and then just have Ruffles come up or something. You know, I thought in junior high I thought that would make an amazing commercial.
It still would. I would buy that bag of chips, but
I would too. I would go out and buy a bag of Ruffles tomorrow.
They know though that the majority of people would be like, "What the fuck is Ruffles saying? This is not, it doesn't make me feel good. I don't feel the nice and fuzzies when I see that Ruffles commercial."
But I mean, I don't know. The internet has opened the world to a lot of different weird advertising concepts. Although they're mostly just for a comedic end, though. Right. You know, they're not trying to weird you out in kind of a Twin Peaks kind of way to try to get you to buy Ruffles.
I would love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So things like, you know, like visual art, like Final Fantasy. You know, is it easy to actually, let's kind of center in on the Final Fantasy kind of thing here. Final Fantasy and video games.
First, but before you continue, did you play any Final Fantasies?
Yeah, you know, but I caught up on it, or I played it on Super Nintendo, whereas I'm kind of getting the feeling that you weren't playing it on that platform.
I played 4, 6, and 7 were my first ones, and 8 actually. I went 7.
Okay.
7, 8, 6, 4. But anyway, you can continue. Sorry.
So yeah, you know, I have played the Final Fantasies on Super Nintendo. I didn't get PlayStation. You know, I was playing like Nintendo 64. So, you know, I wasn't playing like a lot of those bigger Final Fantasy titles on PlayStation, where, you know, a lot of people sort of I know that some of them were out on Nintendo 64, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. I think some of them were.
I know they had Crystal Chronicles on GameCube, but I don't think there was ever a Final Fantasy on Nintendo 64.
Yeah, I didn't end up catching up back with Final Fantasy until I got a PlayStation 2, and then they had like Final Fantasy 10.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
And yeah, that was a pretty good one. So although at the time there were other RPGs, I mean, I was probably more into Zelda and more into Secret of Mana.
Oh, okay. Secret of Mana.
Chrono Trigger.
Now we're fucking. That's my new catchphrase. You like that?
Oh, now we're
fucking.
Okay. That sounds like a good catchphrase.
Yeah. Just say it in your boardroom meeting. Say it in the laundry line. Say it when your mom calls you to dinner.
Oh, so are you using this at work already?
Yeah. Now we're fucking. Dominic, did you get those TPS reports completed? Now we're fucking outside of context. You wanna get lunch? Now we're fucking. All right, I'm done. Go ahead.
Let me know how that goes.
That's terrible. I'm homeless now. my catchphrase ruins my life, but I can't stop using it.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus. Sorry, I derailed. What were we saying?
I was going to ask you, this sort of stuff, these video games, Stephen King novels, stories, narratives, visual art, you know, is this the kind of thing that you look back upon more fondly than maybe kind of, I I guess, your history as a Jehovah's Witness, or even your cultural roots? I mean, do you feel like you identify more sort of just with your artistic tastes and pursuits, and just kind of your, I guess, your experiences with art than you do, I guess, kind of where you feel like you just, you know, happen to grow up culturally or religious wise and that sort of thing? Because it seems like that sort of thing sort of very nostalgic for a lot of people. For you, it just kind of seems like it happened.
Right, absolutely. And I think, man, we're about to get into some deep stuff. I'm just gonna like dip my toe in the water a little bit. There are Jehovah's Witnesses. They're a cult, and I have to disassociate myself from a lot of the stuff I experience, because it's years of repressed feelings and missing out on so many things kids should. And I think I don't look back fondly on that, because a lot of it was shitty. Like, for me, I still have nightmares about going to church. It happens to me like now it's down to probably like once every 2-3 months. I'm locked in churches and I can't escape, even though I want to. So like that part of me, like I do look back on it as something that just happened. But all of the video games, the books, the music and stuff I consumed, that was my choice. And that's something you, as a Haitian American, it's like you do feel like you're in these two worlds, because it's like at home you're eating like maimoulem and plantain and like griot and stuff like that, but like your friends aren't doing that, and you leave your house and you're in a different world almost, but you have these choices you can make. Like, I can choose what kind of books I read. No one's telling me what to do. I can play the video games I want, and even in those universes you get into, you can make choices as well. So I think that also helps. I mean, it helps people like, I would imagine a lot of people like sort of assist themselves out of bad situations, but in their childhood, by sort of understanding that in these universes you can make choices, and maybe that's a reflection on your own life. But I do definitely look more positively on my creative endeavors and stuff that I chose to do, unlike being forced to go to church and that sort of stuff, which was just shitty, so bad.
Those sorts of nightmares, do those influence your art in any kind of way, or have they, I guess, influenced any sort of narrative or anything? Or is that something that, you know, you just rather not even indulge in when you're sort of, you know, making the choice to do something you'd rather do?
I'm not actively indulging it right now, but I think it's so built into me that, I mean, let's take Quinn, for example, in Hip Hop RPG. Quinn is this recurring character that through all my stories, I think for the past 10 years, whenever I write a story, I always end up writing about like these female telepaths who are some kind of stuck in some kind of cult situation or getting killed or something like that. And this is a recurring thing, and it might be my subconscious trying to work something out. I mean, Quinn escaped Illuminatus. He might be the representation of Jehovah or something, or he might just be, I have no idea, but I think subconsciously I'm probably working out a lot of issues in my art, but I do consciously want to work on these things and put them out there, even though honestly it scares me, because it's really close to me. Like, these concepts of what does it feel like to be a Jehovah's Witness? I haven't consciously tried to touch that. I mean, I'd love to, after Hip Hop RPG is done, I'd love to try and work on that and see what it feels like, because I think it will be a unique experience for me and maybe the people watching, because I don't see many animations on YouTube about what it's like to be stuck in church, you know? I mean, I see a lot of like joke cartoons about like Sonic the Hedgehog, but I mean, like, all this other stuff is what's important to me. Do you know what I mean?
That's a hot trend, and you're not even capitalizing on it. You haven't done not one meme Sonic animation.
Man, I haven't hopped on that Sonic train, but I might put Sonic in church, and he doesn't want to be in church with those Chaos Emeralds being thrown at him, but I might just kill a few birds with one stone.
Yeah, in church they don't allow him to go fast.
You got. They tell me I gotta go slow, but I don't want to, okay? I just want to be fast with my friend Hobson, okay? Who talks exactly like me, because I can only do one type of impression.
I saw this amazing video on on that Clickhole
Oh,
YouTube channel.
love click.
Clickhole, the sister site to the Onion, where they just kind of make that fake clickbait site. And the video is about how this amazing new video game was breaking I guess gender barriers with this really amazing female lead character, and it was just a bunch of screenplay of Sonic the Hedgehog. It was just a bunch of screenplay of Sonic and Tails, and the woman sort of narrating it was like, Sonic is breaking the gender barrier by featuring a beautiful blue woman who goes very fast and collects rings. And she was also saying that the beautiful blue woman who was the protagonist in Sonic was also deaf. So Sonic the Hedgehog was as a woman and deaf as well, fighting not only gender barriers but disability barriers as well. And it was just insane.
Clickhole is doing God's work. I'm saying it.
Clickhole is doing God's work. So I want to talk about the hip hop RPG, but just before we do that, I do want to talk about video games specifically and dive into that a little bit more, because I feel like that influences sort of what you do in the hip hop RPG so much. Sure. So I imagine as a kid, was there any kind of limitation to the stuff that you could be playing, on video games, or were video games something that you took to later as an adult when you had more control over your life? Or
that's a great question. All right, so I was raised by my aunt, and my aunt, she like pretty much ruled with an iron fist in every realm of my life except for what I consumed on the computer and with books. And it was one of those things where it's like, she's an Haitian immigrant. She has enough like worries trying to take care of two kids with her job or whatever. And she's like, okay, these kids are on the computer. They're reading books. I don't have to worry about it.
They're preoccupied.
Right. Meanwhile, at least they're not outside gangbanging. They're not fucking girls. They're not stealing. They're doing fine.
Priorities.
Right. But I'm sitting there reading books when I'm like in the 7th grade, about dudes that killing men, women, and children, and just running around in different universes, like people dying and all kinds of weird shit happening. But I was just loving it. And I think, so there weren't restrictions. Every once in a while, she would see us playing like a first-person shooter or a Final Fantasy game, and she'd be like, "This is demonic. What is this? What is you doing?" And we'd just be like, she'd be like, just shake her head and just leave. And to this day, like, she recently threw out all my video games that I had at home, all my video games, DVDs, and comics, because she said, "This demon stuff." I was like, "Oh fuck!" But I would say there were only like 2 or 3 times I can remember where she actively took a book I was reading and threw it out because it was demonic. Lord of the Rings being one of them. And that was why I never finished that series, because I was so furious that she took my Fellowship of the Ring book and threw it away. So there were restrictions, but there also weren't. Like, if she had been a super good Jehovah's Witness Christian, I would be in trouble right now. I probably wouldn't be talking to you because she would have been burning all of my video games. Yeah, good for her on that.
Okay, so you did at least have enough time and enough exposure and enough leeway to sort of play something like Final Fantasy VII. And out of all the different artistic mediums that you were into when you were younger, I mean, were video games something that you felt the most drawn toward? I mean, if there's another thing that, aside from animation, that I think our generation had the unique I guess, kind of position to be like first exposure on an extreme degree.
Yeah.
It's definitely animation, and then there's video games, which, I mean, of course had been around for decades before, but I mean, video games really flourished in the 90s, not only in terms of just their popularity, but also the graphic quality as well. You could, even though, the graphics aren't as good as they are today, I mean, that was the first decade where you could see like blood in Mortal Kombat or, that kind of thing.
And you were able to make your own choices in these games. You could, and nowhere near as much as now, but that was a big thing. It's like, if I want to play this way, I can do that. Video games are probably the biggest like artistic medium that had an effect on me. Even though I watched a lot of cartoons and movies as well, but um, video games were definitely like uh, it definitely affected me on a really powerful level. Just being involved in all those universes and making choices and yeah, it's big stuff.
Aside from Final Fantasy, are there any other video game franchises that have a really strong impact on sort of what you're doing with the hip hop RPG?
Uh, I think I'm pulling the most from that, but I think there are other, you know, that have impact on the hip hop RPG. I don't think so. That's got to be the biggest one. I mean, yeah, I'm
Okay. Well, then that's fair. So what is it about, I guess, Final Fantasy, especially, this kind of older era of the franchise, that made you kind of want to recreate it kind of in this new animation, with these sprites
yeah.
and also, were you as enamored with, I guess it seems like somebody who's so young who is really drawn to books, RPGs like Final Fantasy would be right up your
Yeah.
alley because it's so story
Yeah,
intensive.
you're just reading.
I mean, I wasn't as big into RPGs as I was other games that were maybe a little bit more action driven, but I remember my father liked video games as well, and I remember if I was ever at a point where I was playing an RPG, he would just be like, "Ugh, what the fuck are you doing? This is like boring as hell. You pressed the fight option, and then he went to go hit him, and then it said like 53. What the fuck is that?
What's 53? You should be dead. Why don't you play WWF?
Yeah, and I like those games as well. And my dad was a Mario Kart addict. Loved some Mario
You shoot
Kart.
up Mario Kart. He was just on the
Oh,
streets.
he was just he just liked some racing games,
Okay.
but that was just a really fun, fast, easy, straightforward concept to grasp, and sometimes he could kick my ass in it, so that he liked it, whereas like an RPG. It wasn't, it didn't have that competitive sort of nature to it, and it's
competing. It's about you experiencing this universe on your own.
no, it's kind of like the video game's answer to a book,
Right.
and the thing is, if I wanted a book, I'd just go read a book,
I
but still, I imagine you were really enamored with the story of these Final Fantasy games.
absolutely, because that wasn't Mario shit. I mean, just playing Final Fantasy VII. Like I picked that up on PC like a year after the game came out, and I just knew sort of what it was about, and I wasn't even aware of what I was getting into. It just so you go from Pong to Super Mario Brothers, which was Super Mario Brothers and Sonic is what I was playing when I was a little kid until I was like 12, 13, and I got Final Fantasy VII, and then all of a sudden you're involved in this story that is so deep that you're spending 70 hours on it, and main characters, you grow with them, you train them up, you give them items and sort of understand, at least on a superficial level, who they are. Like you sort of add all these different like characteristics to them, and in Final Fantasy VII specifically, they kill one of the biggest main characters, and that was a huge thing. And I was just sitting there like, this is a beautiful experience for them to just like, you don't get that in Zelda. You don't get like Link dying halfway through or something. It actually wouldn't be Link. It'll be more like Princess Zelda.
Yeah, the storyline isn't anywhere near as dramatic.
Right.
And the thing is, while it may be a great game, storyline wise, it's pretty cliche.
Absolutely, all of them are. I mean, I still.
Whereas
Ocarina of Time was really good, but it is still really cliche. It's like he is the good, great adventurer, and he does good things because he's good. And get the fuck out of here, that shit.
Yeah, the Final Fantasy characters, as far as storyline goes, they're definitely more complex than any kind of other major RPG out there. So I mean, it seems like that complexity and those sorts of storylines have really kind of impacted what you're doing over here with the hip hop RPG.
I really hope so.
Which models itself after a lot of those older sprite based RPG type games, and features a cast of characters that are just pulled out of mainstream contemporary hip hop. Featuring Kanye, Kendrick Lamar, Drake, and right now you're 5 episodes into it.
5 in.
And is this the kind of thing that you know how many episodes you're going to go until you're done, or are you just kind of doing it as it sort of requires? Do you know how it's going to end right now?
Yes. I am like 95% sure how long it's going to be. I want to do 10 episodes total. I'm working on 6 right now.
Okay.
And I want to stop it for my sake, because I know originally I had like 16, 17 episodes written out, and at some point I had to stop. Like, this is crazy. You have to stop.
So you had a bunch of episodes just like storyline wise written out.
Yeah. And this is just
before you've even begun animating.
Exactly. And this is just like we were talking about with the RPG. Like, you play so many of these games that are so deep and have all of these tendrils of story coming off of them. And I was reading like, a Stephen King book that's like 9 books long, like one series, and you just, I'm emulating that because that's where I come from, and I love long, convoluted stories. But I have to rein myself in. That's one of the hardest things to do. But I know I'll also thank myself for it, because this is a very long project. I'm used to very short stories, like boom, get in and out. But this is a kind of a huge undertaking for me. But I know where this is going, though.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I mean, you're pretty much dead set on the idea of there being just like 10 more episodes.
Yeah, maybe 11. Maybe. Yeah, I'm dead set on it, and this kid I'm working with, Uji Rocket, from the UK, he's really good at. He'll tell me with some ideas. He'll be like, yeah, you know what? Maybe you could trim that off if you want to. But then he'll give me some awesome ass idea, like, oh yeah, what if Action Bronson is like riding in a desert and it's like a post-apocalyptic wasteland? I'm like, that's so fucking awesome, but we don't have the resources for this. We don't have the time. So I really had to rein myself in. I'd love to keep this thing going, but I also want to move on to shorter stories that don't have to do with hip hop RPG at some point, because this is just, I love doing this, and I feel like it's my greatest story work and animation work, but it's a lot of work.
It's a lot. Are you at the point where you're?
Oh my
Are you
God.
at the point where you're sick of it yet?
I'm not sick of it, but sometimes it feels like I just wish it could be done. But I know what it looks like in my head, but I also know that realistically, it's like I'm gonna need 2 years to take. It's like you're taking the biggest dump of your life. you're saying like, I have to get this out of my fucking head. That's what it's like.
That's a really great comparison.
Yeah, it's just a steamy shit you can look at online. Sorry, I'm really selling this, aren't I? These guys are just out there clicking. They're clicking to go check it out right now.
So for anybody who's listening right now, and this is one of the main reasons I invited you onto the show to talk about the hip hop RPG, because this is sort of what you're putting most of your creative juices behind right now.
Yeah, it's pumping a lot into this.
So, can you sort of give the listeners a bit of an elevator pitch as to what they can kind of expect, or sort of, why they need to go check this series out?
All right, I can say right now, you've never seen anything like this. I can say that. Yes, I can say that.
I mean, it is true. It is super specific. Yeah. And
it's like, imagine if, all right, elevator pitch, we're in the elevator thing. I'm pushing floor 13, whatever. We're going to die. So as this elevator is rising, we're dying. This animation is about you picking up a game in a pawn shop, a game that never existed. You're the only one who has it. You put it in your Super Nintendo. It's about a bunch of rappers fighting Illuminati aliens in a post-apocalyptic future. Yeah.
It's like two worlds colliding that you would never think would collide ever.
Yeah, and that's the best part of it to me. It's like,
and the thing is, the people who listen to or watch my show and listen to my podcast, who consider themselves to be music nerds, and specifically hip hop nerds, and and love their Kendrick Lamars and their Lupe Fiascos and that sort of thing. I think that they're going to enjoy this, because the thing is, there's also a lot of music humor on it as well, or just kind of, you're taking these real life people, you're putting them into this completely made up fantasy land, but you're sort of applying characteristics and sort of personality traits that that these artists have, at least, in the art that they create, and you're applying it to this, fantasy story.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, the biggest ones for me, each character for me had to have a nugget of, like you said, some truth to them in terms of how they behave, or cliches about them, just being funny about it, because I can get super dark and have things be like just blood and sadness everywhere, but I needed to make it as funny as possible in this dark world. And I mean, the biggest one that was just a gimme, it was just so easy, and I think is the strongest characterization, is like Drake is a white mage. Like, he heals people. That's his thing. He doesn't fight. He's only concerned about making sure you have enough health and MP to go on. And he's like a peacekeeper. As people are fighting, he's like, stop, you all. We need to hold on. Like, that type of thing.
But that's so uncharacteristic of his beefing now. He's beefing.
Yeah, but I think that's all. I think it also makes it funny. It's like, he's this white mage, but he's still like. You're right though. But it's like, imagine a white mage just trying to act mean. It's like. He is beefing.
No, it's true though, because the thing is, the problem with that is, and we could talk about this, is that, you're sort of coming up with characters based off of these artists who, are evolving in their own way.
Right.
I mean, when you initially started this series, and Kendrick is sort of the lead role, and he's saving the world and all that. I mean, when you started this series, To Pimp a Butterfly wasn't even out.
Right.
So I mean, you're trying to come up with this cohesive storyline that goes from beginning to end. You're asking the audience to buy into it, while simultaneously, these people are in the public eye, and they're sort of doing things that have nothing to do with this story that you're pulling together.
Yeah, and I have thought about that. I am a slave to current events. Like, if someone puts out a new album, like in episode 4, I don't like shit. I don't go outside had just come out, and I was like, I want to use that. I gotta put that in somehow. And in the next episode, when Earl comes out, I incorporated that into his character, and it just happened to be perfect for it. But I do, things are, it's to me, it seems to be living and breathing. It's not gonna be just one thing. Like, if Kendrick comes out with an album, 6 months from now, and something's just too perfect for me not to use, like, I have to incorporate it. So it's also this is the most challenging story I've written. And I don't really feel like, sometimes it's super challenging and I have to sit there like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, how am I going to make this work and make it current? But it's super fun, and it's also like a challenge. It's a big challenge for me to figure out, how do I work these things in? It's like, how do I work into Pimp a Butterfly? I did luck out, because in episode 2, I made the idea of a mind worm before To Pimp a Butterfly came out, and it was... And I love that there are parallels between this giant worm that you're inside that's providing energy to something, and the idea of this caterpillar consuming things and eventually turning into a butterfly. I mean, this is like loosely, I guess there's some loose parallels there, but I lucked out, I think. People might think I did that on purpose, but I didn't at the time. It just kind of worked out.
You should say that you did do it on purpose, because you knew Kendrick was calling you, and he's like, you already know what he sounds like. You do a perfect impersonation.
Yeah, he called me, actually. I have
He called you, and he said, what should I call this next album? I'm really inspired by this mind worm that you've pulled together.
I have to know, man. This album is too cool. I have to... It's dog shit. My impression is dog shit. D-Respect is right. He's sitting there turning in his grave right now because D-Respect is dead. I killed him.
Honestly, like, I feel like your Kendrick impersonation is dead on in terms of, the
it's like a little, I guess, a little bit of like a Frenchman, just like a little bit, like, but I just don't know how to.
Yeah, but I feel like you take it 10 steps further and you just make it a French accent.
I do, but it makes me laugh though how bad it is, because especially like when you're making someone like D-Respect angry, it's great anytime you can do that. But I know it's shit, and I know it probably annoys people, so that makes me happier too, that it's not as accurate.
Because you brought him up, let's just go into the podcast a little bit. The podcast that you have with D-Respect, called the Double D's Podcast, man, which I will link you guys down to in the description. And I'll just put it bluntly, they just kind of talk.
Yeah, man.
And it's a lot of current event stuff and just kind of things that they just have some personal feelings on, and, could be some media stuff, could be politics, could be whatever. They just kind of talk it out. However, the thing that kind of perplexes me, and this is really all I want to ask you about the podcast,
right.
and you can kind of say whatever else you want about it after this, is I just kind of feel like you and D of the podcast world are just like, just basically the odd couple of the podcast world. I mean, he's basically Klugman and you're Oscar, you're kind of the cleaner, nicer, more well-mannered, more cultured, just, I guess, kind of more well-meaning guy, while D is just kind of this brutish, weird, gross, a little bit more vulgar, though you're vulgar yourself. But I guess you kind of have a bit of an artsy flair to you. It just kind of seems like to me on the surface that you two just have so little in common. It
seems that way, doesn't it?
Because there's so many moments during the podcast, he's just like, ugh, that's just some dumb, shit that you're into.
Yeah.
You're just into some dumb indie or whatever shit. I haven't heard of that artist. Who cares? Or when he's like trying to talk about sports and he's like, you're not even into this stuff. So, just shut up.
Yeah, very often I'm not into it. But that's the thing, though. The great thing about him is he's deceptive. He wants you to think that he's some meathead jock, but he's not. He's super into the same stuff I am. And you'll get these moments where those are my favorite moments of the podcast are when we both meet at this point where we're both talking about super abstract, weird art shit, because ultimately we are very similar. But I think we do. I mean, it's kind of like we fall into these hyper characterized versions of ourselves because that makes it funny because we can shit on each other. But like we are very similar though.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of seems like both of you have these primary interests which don't really line up, but you have a lot of secondary interests that maybe go a little unnoticed unless you've listened to many episodes of the podcast that are very much in line with one another. It seems like both of you really like, discussion, podcasts, comedians, philosophy. And it seems like that's, you have enough second tier interests together that the podcast actually goes over really nicely, and that you can kind of maintain these discussions, and you both kind of end up, I guess, butting heads a little bit on kind of these more major things, but you kind of have this underlying foundation underneath it all that kind of keeps it all flowing.
Yeah, definitely. I think it feels like doing the podcast is like somehow it's like you're jumping off of a cliff into this abyss, but you know that at some you're gonna land. You're gonna land on your feet every time. Having a conversation with him, it clicks. It's always clicked really well from the beginning, and it's like we could talk about. I feel like we could talk about anything for a really long time. We probably are losing people when we're talking about Bologna or some shit by hour 3. But I mean, that's really the power of D-Respect, is he can take something and really run with it, and I can be like, oh shit, that's great, you brought up this thing. It's super fucking fun. You guys should watch this show or listen to it. There's no watching. Yeah.
I mean, it seems like he's having fun with it as well, to the point where he's not even keeping up his usual YouTube content prior to meeting you, which is originally what brought you two together to begin with.
I think he's cooking up some major stuff, and I don't know. I think the decision to put it on his main channel, it's like we'll get some bigger viewership. I think we should probably put something back on the D-Dot podcast channel to show, like, yeah, we went here, blah, blah, blah. But we're just trying things out.
Probably.
Yeah. We're just trying things out. We're moving around. And, yeah.
Ultimately, sort of what are, I mean, you can't speak for D, but
I can't actually.
Right now,
I'll speak for him.
Oh, can you? Okay. So speak for him right now and tell me what the ambitions for the podcast are correctly, and just kind of, your relationship together.
Our relationship together, we're going to get married, probably. Yeah. And
that's legal now.
Yes, it is legal. But our ambitions, I think, just to keep going and having the good discussions we have, having more guests on. You're welcome whenever. Making it bigger, just bigger in the sense of getting more listeners. Hopefully, just I don't know, really just taking it wherever it goes, as long as it's fun and we have good conversations, which is just, that's inevitable. Because it's been a blast. We've had great guests. We've had some of the most fun discussions I've had. Like we're on episode like 118, which is, we've talked for hundreds of hours at this point. I mean, including, I know it seems like we don't, it seems very scatterbrained, and we both are, but beforehand, we do have an idea of where things are going to go. So I know things, so we do talk a lot outside of it about where things are going to go. I'm really proud of our skits. I think we have really super weird ass skits you guys can listen to.
The skits have gotten funnier over there.
Oh, great, man. Because
and more detailed too. It kind of seems like more discussion goes into the skits.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, we do. Every time we come in with like, yeah, what if you're a zombie and some shit's happened? I don't think we've done any zombie things. We do have Mpluktu, which is, we've created a lot of crazy ass characters on this show on the fly. We create, like, Mpluktu is this Haitian warlord demon who really likes nice kicks. Yeah, I wish Mpluktu has to come up a little more often. But yeah, a lot of weird stuff. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys could actually, just probably put out some videos here and there of just those sketches, or every once in a while just come up with a standalone an audio sketch. I think that would be really cool. So, you guys really seem to be really good at it, and it's sort of the highlight of the episode sometimes.
Dude, thanks, man.
Although I think my favorite part of any, not only a recent episode, but any episode, is when D was trying to tell the story about the guy who walked into his store with the Blu-ray. And you're like, why are you behind the counter? And he's like, listen to me. And he's like, I don't get it. Why are you behind the counter?
I legitimately didn't understand. He's telling me this story, and I'm like,
I know you didn't understand, which is why it was so funny.
Yeah, he was in like he was in like this store trying to buy something, and then like I didn't understand why he was behind the counter of something, and I have to go back and listen to that. That would actually be a really good time to make a skit or something.
I've replayed it numerous times because
we got to isolate that. We got to do it.
Well, I mean, I've listened to so many episodes that I know what he does for a job. I don't realize why you didn't sort of realize what he was talking about right from the get-go.
It's just like I had a brain fart. But at some point, I gotta admit, I knew we had a bit at some point, like probably like a minute into me saying that I didn't get it. I just started laughing because he was so mad that I didn't understand it. I knew that even if I did understand it at that point, I was probably gonna push it a little harder because it just ended up being funny. You just find all these little bits and these little caverns in your mind that you can go down in a conversation.
And then at the very end, I think you guys did like a presidential sketch or something, and then you were like, I don't know why Biopotent is behind the podium.
That was a good one. God damn.
That was a good one. So yeah, definitely check out their podcast. It's a very fun time. And to end off, I would be remiss if I didn't at least ask you at least a couple music questions so that people in the comments could make fun of you for not having a patrician sort of next level, just very high level taste like everybody else.
Bring that shit home.
Who watches my show.
Let's go, man. Let's go. Let's fuck, right? Now we're fucking.
Now we're fucking. You forgot your own fucking catchphrase.
Now we're fucking.
You fucking loser. You forgot your own fucking catchphrase. You said your own catchphrase wrong. Is that what I said?
Let's fuck.
Yes. You just said let's fuck. Like you fucked up your own catchphrase.
See how that works in the streets, my friend. Ooh, Jesus.
I was just going to ask you, sort of what, we're at the second half of the year. List season's probably going to be coming up really soon, unless the world ends next week.
And it will, by my hand. But
and it will. So, let us know right now what your favorite albums of 2015 are, so that everybody knows that before they die, some of what your favorite records of this year have been thus far.
Okay. Is To Pimp a Butterfly 2015 or 2014?
It's 2015.
Bro, put that shit at the top, all right?
Okay.
And then put Depression Cherry.
Okay. Wow, you really loved it.
I love Beach House, man.
Are you excited for the next record? They're coming out with another record.
Yeah, thank your lucky stars. I'm waiting. I'm charged up right now. Charged up like Drake. Okay. My hands are glowing like Sonic the Hedgehog. You know what I'm saying? I'm ready to go. Depression Cherry. Throw in Currents from Tame Impala.
Okay,
I love
cool.
Currents. And Uh, I think those are the big ones. Yeah, those three.
I know that you saw them this year. You saw Death Grips this
Oh
year.
yeah. Oh, so-
You know, where does the powers that be sort of sit on your favorites list?
um, I've only listened to them like twice.
Oh, you're not as crazy about
Not
it.
really.
No?
Not really. I mean, I got to listen to it some more, man. Like, I really don't. Yeah, it really didn't. I gotta listen to it some more. I get into these moments with albums. I will choose like 4 or 5 albums and just listen to them over and over again. It's hard for me. Like, of course, I love the singles from the powers that be. Like, I listen to. All right, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna sound like a fucking plebe for saying, but like, I listen to On GP and I'm like, this to me sounds like it's like a crazy, beautiful symphony. Like it's just, it's almost like, and I feel like an asshole because I'm saying this yet I only listened to the album like twice. But like On GP for me is like, it's a beautiful, crazy song. I imagine when I listen to that, it sounds like the U.S. It sounds like I get this picture of the U.S. being, like an idealized but somehow post-apocalyptic form of the U.S. Like you'd hear in some kind of alternate universe commercial about U.S. propaganda. Does that make any sense? No, it doesn't. But anyway, yeah.
Um, but those other albums that you've listed, you've been returning to those albums a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I listen to them all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I've returned to Pimp a Butterfly tons of times.
So
Although I will say, I myself haven't returned to the powers that be, at least not many times after the release of the record. At least for maybe like the album came out. I listened to it a ton of times to review it. Loved it. Thought it was amazing. Thought it complemented the first disc of the album really well, Jenny Death. Really enjoyed it. And then after I dropped the review, maybe like a week or so after I dropped the review, it's not that I didn't like the album or that I didn't like any other of the other Death Grips albums, but I think I had burnt myself out on them.
goddamn.
I really did. And then I went to go see them live, and for the second time, two motherfuckers, two. Not a lot of people can say that. Two times. Death Grips 2 times. Two. Now we're fucking.
Oh, hold up. MC Ride saying my catchphrase. Now we're fucking. All right. Continue.
And then after that, I kind of feel like I did enjoy the show. I thought the show was great. But I think that kind of solidified the mood that I was in, where I was just like, man, I'm burnt out on Death Grips right now. I'm just like praying they don't come out with anything like for like 2 years or something. And it wasn't until I think just the other day you could check and see on my Twitter account when I was listening to them the other day at the gym. I was just like, I should listen to this again. And then I didn't. I was like, yeah, this is great. Oh man.
Back in.
But yeah, I had essentially burnt myself out on them for like a minute, and I just didn't even want to listen to any Death Grips. Like, I'd look at the Money Store and be like, ugh, that thing again. Oh man, I've listened to that thing so many fucking times. But that's the thing, it's like you could, as much as you might enjoy stuff, you could really burn yourself out on stuff. And the thing is, that's kind of a position I haven't really put myself in for a long time, because there are a lot of records that I remember I'd play over and over and over when I was in high school, and albums that I think are still really good today. But, even today, I don't even really, have any kind of intense passion to listen to any of them, because I just played them to death, when I was in high school and college. I just kind of know them like the back of my head, the back of my hand. If I ever want to listen to them, all I need to do is fucking think about it.
It's weird feelings. You just. Yeah, you burn it out. I'm getting there with. I think I'm past that with Pimp a Butterfly. I still listen to it a lot, but I'm like, oh man. And then you get to the point where you start skipping tracks, and you're like, oh geez, gotta move on to something else. You know what I mean?
I heard you in the podcast once. You were like talking about some whack lines on that record.
What did I say?
I think you pointed out the line where he said, I remember in the podcast you said this line was whack when he goes, he gave us Billie Jean. You think he touched those kids?
Yeah, terrible. No, I don't like it.
Not that. Listen, it's not that I agree or disagree. It's just that I thought the way that you put that was really funny.
It's a whack line because it's like that's the reason Billie Jean is the reason why he didn't touch those kids. That song he made means that it's like, is that what you're gonna say in court, Kendrick? Like, Your Honor, I can prove to you that he did not touch those kids, man. Check out this album. Listen to that shit, man. And the judge is like, you know what? This shit is hot. Like, I rest my case, motherfucker.
Well, it's true. It is shit logic.
Yeah. It sounds good, of course, coming out of it.
As much it sounds great, and as much as I love that record, it's not good logic.
It's not.
I mean, Kendrick could go out and sort of kill a bunch of people tomorrow, but nobody would say in court, it's like, hey man, he gave us To Pimp a Butterfly. You think he did that? You think he killed all those people?
No, I think killed those people, man. Listen to this fucking album. And the jury's like, you know what? Acquit this man. Acquit him.
Hey, I mean, at least, honestly, like, I wish he would have just come out and made the argument that if you make a piece of art that's great enough, it should just, completely exonerate you from any bad that you do.
I mean, that's basically what he's saying. I mean,
like, if you're a great successful artist, you should just be allowed to. Just laws should not apply.
He touched those kids. What if he's wait? I'm about to blow your mind. I'm about to blow your dick right now.
Oh,
all right?
Shit!
So what if he's saying he gave us Billie Jean? Do you think he touched those kids? What if he's saying that? You really think he touched those kids? Listen to this. What if he's actually saying, listen to Billie Jean? What? There's some stuff in here, man. Do you think he touched those kids? Like, what if it's a question? Of course it's not, but that's alternate universe.
That's alternate universe, Kendrick.
Questioning Kendrick. Inquisitor Kendrick. Inquisitor Kendrick for the land of...
I'm imagining an alternate universe where the only thing that's different is that line. Is just that
your whole universe is created. It's like all this potential of stuff. People could be flying, cancer and AIDS could be gone. Like, no, it's just one line and one album.
And it's not even the line is that different. The lyrics are the same, but the thing is, he says it with a different inflection.
Oh my god!
He says it with the inflection of a question rather than an exclamation.
We figured out interdimensional travel. Go to this place, and we get there. It's like, what is? There's no difference. We spent all the resources on Earth to try and find a new world that's different, and nothing. Yeah.
And then someone discovers the difference. It says,
I've got it, goddamn! Dude, nuts, man.
I think we're going to leave it at that. My guest, Dominick Rabrun, thank you for coming on the show and talking about what it is you do. And thank you for giving us this wonderful catchphrase, which I'm sure is going to catch on the internet.
Listen here, fella. Now we're fucking on the Needle Drop podcast. Thank you for having me here, and thanks for supporting me being a friend. And it's really fun to be in a different position. Like, I always feel weird being interviewed. It feels like being in a spaceship that's not of my creation, but this is a really fun spaceship. This is a fun space you created. You're really good at interviewing. This is great. Great questions. Awesome stuff. Love your work, of course. Good stuff, man.
Now we're fucking.
God damn it.
Hey, I'm going to bring them together. Now we're fucking forever.